Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. I shall see what's going on on our lovely island of Fawnhallow today. Recording now, of course, because D&D later. What am I expecting from this D&D session? I'm not really sure at this point. Like, I wish I had a good answer for that or something. Like, I know what the general overall goal is, but like, I don't know. Maybe I just feel a bit off in this campaign. Like, I don't know, like, I haven't hit the stride of like this particular arc. To be fair, it wasn't exactly what the way I intended it sort of to plan out, but hello everyone, right now in Fawnhallow at 6:03 PM on Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. Yeah. It's a bit weird, you know, because I think I'm definitely struggling a little bit with it, like from a prep standpoint, because it's not very lore focused what we're doing right now. Like the other campaign, despite the fact that there are like some very big things which happened in it, it's all very lore centralized, so it's a lot easier for me to work out because lore is something which is easy for me to sort of stitch together and to play a character. But this one is much more like meant to be like exploration and combat, like story arc. Like even in a little bit of survival, but at the same time it's like it's a bit difficult because it's like, how do you make that necessarily that engaging, you know? There's, you know, previously it would be like, oh yeah, lore is what, you know, kind of keeps certain parts of it interesting or whatever, but it's a bit harder this way around, methinks. But yeah, cool as I'm just like, what ways can I make this engaging? You know, when does it become boring? When does it go interesting? Like, you know, the D&D doesn't have too much in the level of resource. I mean, it's got resource management of like spell usage and something, and that's what random encounters are meant to necessarily burn, but at the same time it's like, you can't do this forever, can you? Because they're basically going on this large pilgrimage, essentially, and I don't know. But this is just a peek behind the DM curtain, I suppose, a little bit, which I don't think any of the players in this campaign necessarily, well, I mean, sometimes they might do, but it's more I'm having some internal deliberations being like, you know, I don't want this story arc to become stale necessarily, because what this story arc is like, there's 5 regions that they're meant to go through, and each one's meant to essentially escalate the difficulty of the encounters that they face. Like this first one is just meant to be a teaser. There's basically like essentially no resource management needed because they will go to the city soon enough that it doesn't matter. The second one is meant to be like start to introduce it, which I don't know if I'll get to today necessarily. That is my design for it was a simplistic system where it's basically based on survival roles, and they can sacrifice some of their roles to actually follow up on this encounter essentially. And I think, you know, I'm unfortunately in a place where I'm just like, I think I'm drawing it on just like a bit too long, maybe. Like I did a bit too much in my first leg of a journey, which I'm like, oh, you know, maybe I got to consider it more. And maybe they'll still be encouraged a bit more, like if they're considering, you know, how many supplies they have and everything like that, and how it's more difficult to top up. Because the general idea I have is basically that it gets basically the supplies get harder and harder, and the encounters get harder, I suppose, the further they go. Culminating, I suppose, in the, I guess, mild spoilers, so if you're a part of this campaign you should probably stop listening. Culminating in the last stretch of the journey, which is meant to be like, okay, you cannot resupply effectively anymore. That's the idea. But I'm like, I think maybe I dallied too long on this first leg of a journey. Oh, it's not even been that long. I think it's only been like 2 or 3 sessions on this leg of a journey now I think about it. So maybe I'm overthinking it. It just feels like a long time because it started before the holiday and then continued on. Let's see. Starting a pilgrimage. Yeah. But to be fair, it's also because in this first part of the journey is when most things will happen. So maybe I should change things up. You know, initially what I was planning on doing was this thing, and then maybe now I should change up the order. Maybe we should start the second leg of a journey. And there should be just more downtime, because the first leg of a journey is more of an introduction of what sort of things you might see. And the second leg is when you need to actually start planning a bit more. It's good to talk these things out loud so I can figure out myself, you know, what's the best course of action. And I don't know what the answer is to that necessarily. Because I find it very easy to make lore character story engaging. I find it quite difficult to make exploration engage in combat. Can be, depending on how it goes. Like, but at the same time, you know, sometimes when I've tried to make combat like harder or been like, oh, there's more strategy needed for this, it's made it feel worse, and I'm like, oh, okay. You know, it's a delicate balance, which I don't think I have quite right. But still, it's a balance I do want to get right, but it's not necessarily the easiest. I think that's probably the way. I think I value too much on this first leg, and I want to establish that these next legs, I'm probably going to have far fewer encounters because they'll probably not want to sacrifice their supplies in case they don't make it. But I mean, that also, I've got to be honest, that's going to leave a possibility that if they don't make it, they run out of supplies, they like starve out there or something. Am I going to be prepared for the consequences of that necessarily? It's very different, you know, falling in battle or falling for a law reason compared to falling... Oh my gosh, that's so loud. Then your party being wiped because of excavation survival reasoning, you know? And so in some ways, I'm like, maybe I should hurry it along a bit. I don't know. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. Are my players even enjoying the sessions as they are at the moment? I don't know. Because sometimes, you know, I'm just sort of like, when I want it from a law, what makes a law part easy is I sort of like let them loose and be like, alright, you can do kind of like whatever you want, to be honest. And then it just sort of, they can entertain themselves almost for like 2 hours just by doing silly antics, which I just narrate essentially the antics for. But it's like, that can't carry it forever necessarily. You know, things have to be not volatile, but things have to not just have stakes as well, but also capture some of the imagination, right? I don't know. I'm just kind of speaking about whatever now, but just something I'm thinking about, really. But if there even is a particularly good way to tackle it. Yeah. I think that's probably, like, if I don't introduce it this session, like, definitely next session it should be introduced. Yeah, basically some sort of survival-based system. And then more and more layers get added to the survival-based system. Then on each echelon they go down. I don't know. It's difficult. It's difficult. Because it's even more interesting in a certain sense, because it's definitely something I thought about over the holidays, as well when I was like prepping for this. But even still, you know, it's more of a reflection I've had more recently, as well, now that they've done a bit of that. The actual journey itself. Does it feel like... I mean, also at the same time, like, it probably doesn't feel like a pilgrimage actually started. And also at the same time, it's because I feel like it feels a bit sort of like aimless, because I mean this arc is meant to be just basically just keep going from a mechanical sense. It's not necessarily like a big lore uncovering or anything, but I will say they did have the opportunity to, but it didn't really pan out that way, which I don't think is, again, of any fault. Yeah. So that's interesting to think about. How do you plan something like this? I'm not sure. What did Matt Mercer do back in Critical Role when he was doing these sort of pillars? I mean, maybe I should watch season 3, because I know season 3 is divided up into 3 different areas, right? Like 3 groups. One is like a combat group, one is like a exploration lore group, and the other is like a character social group or something. Which I think is a cool way to do it. So. Yeah. I also might just be pretty tired. I feel like I haven't been sleeping the best. Recently. Which is maybe affecting my own judgment. I don't know. It just feels weird to think about. There's certainly a lot of, I will say, with double clicking issues back in my mouse again. I don't know how it keeps coming back and going again. Like, what's it doing? I'm not doing anything. But like literally for the past week or past almost like 2 weeks or something, like nothing. No issues with it whatsoever. Yeah, maybe it's something I can Google. Let's see. D&D survival based system. Because I don't know. I just wonder if basically just doing random encounter after random encounter is a little bit uninteresting. This is me voicing my thoughts. Because I want to do it in some sense where like, oh, I describe a scenery or describe something like this and it seems interesting, and then if they want to do it from a roleplay perspective, they can take a lead of like, oh, this is what I do. But it's not really happening as organically as I want. Because I think it's difficult. Like, that's basically just asking them to DM in a sense, being like, here's an open sort of world, do what you want with it. But it's much easier to be like, here's something, react to it in character, right? I think it's probably a tall ask to do something else regarding that. So I do want to give him like essentially, because the way I'm thinking about it is because there are some random encounters which I'm just like, I gave to them, and fully I understand that like they might not like resolve the encounter, they might not get anything from it. It's just meant to be more like a vehicle for them to interact with should they want to. But it's also at the same time, it's like, is it uninteresting? Because they've currently got their goal of they want to make it to the end, right? So I'm just like, maybe I should sort of speed it along a little bit so it's not so uninteresting to focus on. But I also don't know how to run survival mechanics particularly well. Mainly because I've never really seen them, nor have I ever been in a D&D campaign which used them. But yeah, I don't know. But yeah, again, it's like the whole reason for these survival-based challenges is because there's a stakes, because what if they fail? Well, the ultimate failure would be they can't survive anymore when they die. A long way because they starved to death or can't find clean water or die of overexposure or something. But it's like, this is at the end of the day meant to be quite like a heroic sort of heroes with swords, sword and board sort of campaign, right? And isn't that just like a really anticlimactic way to die? It's not for a lore reason, it's not to like a cool enemy, it's not for a big sacrifice, it's just because they couldn't find food. Like, I'm not doing some sort of gritty realism. I think it might not have as much appeal. Okay, I think that's probably the answer is to just have a bit of a fewer encounters and give them more survival-based encounters, I think, rather than like, oh, here's something random which happens. I don't know. The difficulty comes, I think, from a DM perspective, is when it's like, oh, okay, here's like basically a low stakes thing where it's like, oh, you need to stop and like gather food or something, and then it basically just boils down to, okay, I roll for survival, okay, you got some food, nice, and that's it. Like, it's like there's no... I'm not saying that there should be necessary roleplay at that sort of section, but I'm just like, if you boil it down to sort of brass tacks, it feels a bit uninteresting that way, compared to social encounters where you can at least roleplay the conversation. If my players don't engage with roleplaying like a exploration survival sort of thing, then it makes it harder. So it's basically just alternating between that and a combat encounter. I mean, that's pretty difficult. Maybe I should do more puzzle solving, but I don't know, that's also not been as engaged. That's why I kind of want to make it like a... I wonder if I shot myself in the foot with a setting, because it's kind of like, when is it best? It's when they can do basically silly antics, they have a lot of things to interact with and do as they want, but right now they're sort of like in wilderness travelling. It's like there's not as much to interact with necessarily. Which I'm like, did I shoot myself in the foot with a setting? I mean, I couldn't have predicted this when I made this plot line, because I didn't know necessarily what would resonate with them. Yeah, I think just like a happy middle ground is just to sort of reduce the amount of encounters and change the style of the encounter. Because then we can just skip through some of the other stuff instead. But yeah, like I want them to roll survival rules, but so far they haven't been needing to track, I suppose, resources as much. So maybe we do an introduction event and the encounter layers on top of it. I don't know, it feels like I'm trying to design a game from the ground up and I'm not really sure what to do with it. That's what makes it so difficult. That's all I say to that. I also don't know what the survival mechanics are particularly well. And what time frame is that going to be on? If they're basically going on this pilgrimage. Because it basically means that they skip 3 days. Because this pilgrimage is probably going to take... Like, if I wanted to do it with more realistic time frames, I would be like, it should probably take like months or something. But I'm not going to make them go on it for months. We're going to shorten it down by necessity. That's also why like the campaign, like in World War campaign, it's been like a week or 2 or something. So in like a month or 2 or something. Despite the fact that the campaigns have been going on for 2 years. I guess I find it a bit, like it's my own personal feeling, but I find it difficult to inject in like extended periods of time. When really I should be being like, okay, yeah, you had to do this the next day. There's no way you do all this in one day. But I don't know. Or it's not like you do something every single day related to it. But maybe you would. Maybe you would. I don't know. You know, I'm going to look this up. Critical Role Campaign 2 Timeline. Like, how long did the campaign 2 take over? Day 1. That took place over the course of what? Less than a year? About 300 days or something? So it was about 60 days so far. I mean, at this rate it would take a decade to finish a campaign. I mean, I don't think that's that crazy for it being like even more accelerated. Because I remember they also had like a big period of downtime in the middle, didn't they? But also, maybe I shouldn't be comparing it to Critical Role's campaign necessarily. If mine is just more fast-paced because the player characters are more active in it, fair enough. I don't know. Yeah, because Travelling We did it. Did all that 4 days over just one session. Yeah, I think on reflection I'm probably doing too many encounters in this sort of thing. Like, but with the amount of encounters I've already done, maybe they should have already been starting the third leg of the journey. So let's reduce it down a bit. I think that'll help. I need to revisit my notes. Luckily, we still got an hour for D&D, so anyway. On that note, I'm going to round this episode up here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Animal Crossing New Horizons. I've been Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see each other again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time. Bye bye for now.